You see a snake in your garden. For a split second, your brain stops processing details. You don't know what species it is. You don't know if it's dangerous. You just know one thing: snake. And for millions of years, that has been enough. Your heart rate jumps, your attention narrows. Every instinct says the same thing: stay away or kill it. Now here's the strange part. The snake you're looking at might be one of the most useful animals that will ever visit your property. Not despite being a snake, because of it. This is the garter snake, one of the most common snakes in North America, one of the most misunderstood, and one of the few predators that many experienced gardeners quietly protect. But before we get to that, we need to talk about fear, because garter snakes have a problem. Their entire body plan triggers an ancient alarm system in the human brain. Long body, no legs, silent movement. A garter snake can be completely harmless and still make people uncomfortable before it has done anything at all. And that's exactly what happens. Every year, countless garter snakes are killed simply because someone saw a snake and made a decision before asking a question. The question being, what exactly am I looking at? The answer is more interesting than most people realize. There isn't just one garter snake. There are dozens of species and subspecies spread across North America. Some are green, some are brown, some are almost black. Many have stripes running down their backs. Some have bright patterns. Others blend so perfectly into grass and leaves that you can look directly at one and never see it. And that camouflage matters, because garter snakes spend most of their lives trying not to be noticed. Which is ironic, because when humans do notice them, they often assume the worst. Part of the reason is simple. Most people don't know how many harmless snakes exist. They know rattlesnakes, they know copperheads, they know cottonmouths. The dangerous species get remembered. The harmless ones usually don't. And that's where garter snakes end up, caught in the shadow of animals they aren't. But here's the first thing that surprises people. A garter snake doesn't want to bite you. In fact, if you ever encounter one, its entire strategy revolves around avoiding a fight. It would rather disappear, and it's remarkably good at doing exactly that. A garter snake can vanish into grass so quickly that it almost looks like a magic trick. 1 second it's there, the next second it's gone. Which raises an interesting question. If these snakes spend so much energy avoiding conflict, why are gardeners so happy to have them around? The answer begins with what garter snakes do after the sun goes down. A garter snake spends most of its life hunting. Not mice, not rabbits, not anything dramatic. It hunts the small things most people barely notice: slugs, earthworms, large insects, amphibians, and occasionally things even stranger. If you've ever walked into your garden in the early morning and found your lettuce leaves shredded, your seedlings chewed down to stumps, or mysterious holes appearing overnight, there's a good chance the culprit wasn't a rabbit. It was something much smaller, something slower, something that operates almost entirely under cover of darkness: slugs. Gardeners wage war against slugs every year. They build traps, they spread barriers, they buy chemicals, and yet the damage keeps appearing. What makes slugs so frustrating is that they attack the most vulnerable parts of a plant: the fresh growth, the tender leaves, the seedlings, the parts the plant can least afford to lose. And garter snakes eat them. Not because they're helping your garden, not because they're trying to be useful, simply because evolution turned them into efficient opportunists. A garter snake doesn't care about your tomatoes, it cares about finding food. The fact that those goals sometimes align is one of nature's more convenient accidents. And slugs aren't the only thing on the menu. Young rodents, large insects, caterpillars, various agricultural pests. A healthy garter snake spends its life quietly removing animals that gardeners often spend considerable time and money trying to control. Which is why many experienced gardeners react very differently when they see one. A beginner sees a snake. An experienced gardener often sees free pest control. But that still doesn't explain something. If garter snakes are so useful, why aren't there more of them? Why aren't gardens full of snakes? Because being a garter snake is surprisingly dangerous. Almost everything eats them. Hawks, owls, herons, foxes, raccoons, coyotes, larger snakes, even domestic cats. To much of the animal kingdom, a garter snake isn't a predator, it's lunch. And that creates a problem. Because unlike a rattlesnake, a garter snake doesn't have a terrifying weapon to discourage attackers. No venom powerful enough to stop large predators. No rattle. No intimidating display. So how does it survive? The answer is one of the strangest defensive systems in the reptile world.
When threatened, a garter snake may release a foul-smelling musk from glands near its tail. And when I say foul-smelling, I mean genuinely awful. People who handle wild garter snakes often describe the odor as something between rotten fish and concentrated swamp water. The goal isn't to hurt a predator. The goal is to make itself seem disgusting enough to drop. And, surprisingly often, it works. But that's only the beginning, because some garter snakes possess a much stranger defense. One so unusual that for years, scientists struggled to understand how it evolved. A defense that starts with one of the deadliest predators in North America, the rough-skinned newt. And what happens when a snake decides to eat something that should be impossible to survive? At first glance, it doesn't look particularly dangerous. It's slow, it's harmless looking. You could mistake it for any ordinary newt. That would be a mistake. Because the rough-skinned newt carries one of the most powerful natural toxins on Earth, tetrodotoxin, the same toxin found in pufferfish. A poison so potent that a tiny amount can shut down the nervous system, stop muscles from functioning, and cause death through paralysis. To most predators, the message is simple. Eat this and you die. And for millions of years, that message worked, until one predator started ignoring it, the garter snake. Some populations of garter snakes evolved resistance to tetrodotoxin. Not complete immunity, resistance. Enough resistance to do something extraordinary. They can eat an animal that would kill most other predators. Scientists studying this relationship discovered something remarkable. The more toxic the newts became, the more resistant the snakes became. And the more resistant the snakes became, the more toxic the newts became. It was an evolutionary arms race, predator and prey, each forcing the other to change, each pushing the other further for millions of years. In some regions, the toxin levels became so extreme that researchers estimated a single newt carried enough poison to kill multiple adult humans. And yet, certain garter snakes could still eat them, not without consequences. The toxin often affects the snakes. They can become sluggish. Their movements can slow dramatically. Some appear temporarily impaired after consuming highly toxic prey. But they survive, and survival is all evolution cares about. Think about what that means. Most people see a small garden snake and assume they're looking at one of nature's simplest animals. But hidden inside that ordinary-looking reptile is the product of an evolutionary battle that has been unfolding for longer than human civilization has existed. A battle written into its genes. A battle still happening today. And somehow, that's still not the strangest thing garter snakes do. Because once every year, in certain places across North America, something happens that looks almost unreal. Thousands of snakes emerge from the ground. At the same time. From the same place. And when people see it for the first time, many assume they've discovered the setting of a nightmare. The reality is much more interesting. Every winter presents a problem for a garter snake. Snakes are reptiles. Their body temperature depends on the environment around them. When temperatures drop far enough, survival becomes difficult. A single snake hiding under a rock isn't enough. A shallow burrow isn't enough. To survive northern winters, garter snakes need something better. They need a hibernaculum, an underground refuge that remains stable even when the world above freezes. And year after year, they return to the same locations, sometimes by the hundreds, sometimes by the thousands.
sometimes by numbers so large they seem impossible. In parts of Manitoba, Canada, some of the largest snake gatherings on Earth take place every spring. As winter releases its grip, garter snakes begin emerging from underground dens. Thousands of them, moving over one another, twisting together in living knots. The ground itself appears to move. For many people, it's one of the most disturbing sights in nature. For biologists, it's one of the most extraordinary, because these snakes aren't gathering to hunt, they're gathering to reproduce. And what happens next is unlike almost anything most people have ever seen.
What happens next is unlike almost anything most people have ever seen. When a female emerges from the den, males begin searching for her almost immediately, and they find her using scent. The female releases pheromones into the air. The males follow them, and sometimes dozens of males find the same female at the same time. The result is something called a mating ball, a writhing mass of snakes, all competing for the opportunity to reproduce. From a distance, it can look like a single giant organism, a living knot of scales and movement, hundreds of bodies twisting together. For people seeing it for the first time, the reaction is usually the same: shock, disbelief, sometimes outright horror. But what you're looking at isn't aggression. It isn't an attack. It's one of the largest wildlife gatherings on the continent, an event that has been happening long before humans arrived and will probably continue long after we're gone. And there's another detail that makes this story even stranger. Some male garter snakes produce pheromones that mimic females. Scientists call them she-males. For a brief period after emerging from hibernation, these males smell like females. Other males become attracted to them and form mating balls around them. At first glance, that sounds like a mistake, but it may actually provide an advantage. A large cluster of snakes generates heat. In the cold conditions of early spring, additional warmth can help a snake become active faster. Nature is full of solutions that sound absurd until you realize they work, and garter snakes seem particularly talented at finding them. Which brings us back to the question we started with: why do so many people kill these animals? Because most encounters last only a few seconds. You see movement in the grass, you recognize the shape, and your brain supplies the rest. Danger, threat, problem. The snake never gets a chance to be anything else. It never gets a chance to be the predator, quietly reducing pests in your garden. It never gets a chance to be the survivor that evolved resistance to one of the deadliest toxins in nature. It never gets a chance to be the participant in one of the largest reptile gatherings on Earth. It remains only a snake. And that single word often erases everything else. But if you've watched this far, you know something most people don't. You know that the animal moving through the grass isn't what most people think it is. It's not hunting you. It's not waiting to attack. It's trying to do exactly what it has been doing for millions of years. Find food, avoid predators, survive long enough to reproduce. That's all. And yet, from those simple goals came something extraordinary. A creature that can thrive in forests, wetlands, grasslands, farms, suburbs, and backyard gardens. A creature that survived ice ages. A creature that adapted to toxins, predators, changing climates, and landscapes transformed by humans. A creature so successful that it spread across much of an entire continent. Not by being feared, by being adaptable, by being resilient, by quietly doing its job. And maybe that's the most interesting thing about the garter snake. Not that it's harmless, not that it's useful, not even that it's strange. Is that almost everything people think they know about it comes from seeing the word snake and stopping there. The reality is far more interesting. Because hidden beneath that first reaction is one of the most successful reptiles in North America. A hunter, a survivor, a master of adaptation. And while most people are sleeping, it's still out there, moving silently through the grass, doing exactly what it has done for millions of years, and asking absolutely nothing from us except to be left alone.